In 1985, Steve Jobs was fired from the company he co-founded, Apple. The man who gave the world the Macintosh was thrown out by his own board. Humiliated, betrayed, devastated. Most people would have given up. But Steve Jobs did something extraordinary instead. This is the untold, emotional story of how the billionaire who was fired for his own company came back to build the most valuable company in the world. Steve Jobs was a visionary from the beginning. In 1976, at just 21 years old, he co-founded Apple with Steve Wozniak in his parents' garage. They started with nothing but big dreams. Within a few years, Apple became one of the fastest-growing companies in America. The launch of the Macintosh in 1984 made Steve Jobs a superstar. He was young, rich, and seen as a genius who was changing the world. But behind the success, trouble was brewing inside Apple. There were power struggles. Steve's demanding personality created tension with the board and employees. In 1985, after a major internal conflict, the board voted to remove Steve Jobs from his own company. He was stripped of all power. The man who built Apple was fired by the very people he had brought in. The betrayal cut deep. Steve later said it was one of the most painful moments of his life. He felt like a public failure. He had lost the company he loved. After being fired, Steve was devastated. He sold most of his Apple stock and felt lost. But instead of giving up, he did something bold. He started a new company called Next, focusing on high-end computers for education and business. He also bought a small animation studio called Pixar for $10 million. Those years were difficult. Next struggled financially. Pixar was burning money. Steve faced failure after failure. But during this time, he learned some of his most important lessons about leadership, design, and patience. In 1995, Pixar released Toy Story, the first fully computer-animated feature film. It was a massive success. Steve Jobs became a billionaire overnight because of Pixar. Meanwhile, Apple was struggling badly. The company was losing money and direction. In 1997, Apple decided to buy Next for $429 million. And with that deal, Steve Jobs returned to the company he had co-founded. After being fired from Apple in 1985, Steve Jobs felt completely lost. The company he had poured his heart and soul into for 10 years had rejected him. He was only 30 years old, but he felt like his best days were already behind him. The betrayal from the board and his own team hurt him deeply. For the first time in his life, he didn't know what to do next. But instead of giving up, Steve made a bold decision. He used his own money to start a new company called Next. His vision was to create powerful computers for education and business, machines that were beautiful, advanced, and easy to use. At the same time, he bought a small computer graphics company called Pixar for $10 million. Most people thought both moves were risky and unnecessary. The next few years were incredibly difficult. Next struggled to find customers. The computers were too expensive and didn't sell well. Pixar was losing money every year making short animated films. Steve was burning through his personal fortune fast. There were many moments when it looked like both companies would fail completely. During this dark period, Steve learned some of his most valuable lessons. He learned humility. He learned to focus on what really matters. He learned that failure can be a great teacher. He also spent more time with his family and began to think differently about life and business. In 1995, Pixar released its first full-length movie, Toy Story. It was the world's first computer-animated feature film. The movie was a massive success. It made hundreds of millions of dollars and won many awards. Suddenly, Steve Jobs became a billionaire because of Pixar. The company he had bought almost as a side project had made him richer than he had ever been at Apple. Meanwhile, Apple was in serious trouble. The company was losing money, its products were outdated, and it was on the verge of bankruptcy. In 1997, Apple made a desperate move. They bought Next for $429 million. With this deal, Steve Jobs returned to the company he had co-founded 12 years earlier. His return was not easy. The company was in chaos. But Steve quickly took control. He simplified the product line, focused on design and user experience, and brought back the passion that had been missing. In 1998, he launched the iMac, a colorful, all-in-one computer that became a huge hit. This was the beginning of Apple's incredible comeback. Steve Jobs' return to Apple in 1997 marked one of the greatest comebacks in business history. The company was losing hundreds of millions of dollars every year. Products were outdated. Employees were demotivated. The future looked dark. But Steve immediately took charge. He made tough decisions. He cut many product lines to focus only on what truly mattered. He brought back the passion and creativity that had been missing for years. In 1998, Apple launched the iMac, a colorful, user-friendly computer that captured the world's attention. It was a massive success and helped bring Apple back from the brink. But Steve wasn't satisfied. He had bigger dreams. In 2001, Apple introduced the iPod, a revolutionary portable music player. It changed the music industry forever. Then came iTunes, which transformed how people bought and listened to music. The real game changer arrived in 2007. Steve Jobs stood on stage and introduced the iPhone, a device that combined a phone, an iPod, and an internet communicator. The world had never seen anything like it. The iPhone didn't just create a new product category. It created an entire ecosystem. Apps, App Store, mobile internet. Everything changed because of it. Then in 2010, the iPad was launched. It created the modern tablet market. Under Steve's leadership, Apple didn't just recover. It became the most valuable company in the world. The man who was once fired from Apple had saved it and made it greater than anyone could have imagined. But Steve's journey was not just about products. It was about his philosophy. He believed in simplicity, beautiful design, and putting the user first. He often said, "Stay hungry, stay foolish." He pushed his team to think differently and to create things that people didn't even know they wanted. However, behind the success, Steve was fighting a private battle. In 2003, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He fought the disease bravely for many years while continuing to lead Apple. His health struggles made him even more focused on creating meaningful work and leaving a legacy. On October 5, 2011, Steve Jobs passed away at the age of 56. The world mourned the loss of a true visionary. But his impact continues to live on through every Apple product, every Pixar movie, and every person inspired by a story. The most powerful lesson from Steve Jobs' life is this: getting fired can be the best thing that happens to you. It forces you to start over, to think differently, and to become stronger. Steve turned his biggest failure into his greatest success. Steve Jobs' journey teaches us one of the most powerful lessons in life. Sometimes your biggest failure becomes a foundation for your greatest success. Being fired from Apple in 1985 was one of the most painful experiences of his life. He felt betrayed, humiliated, and lost. But that painful chapter forced him to start over, to think differently, and to grow in ways he never would have if he had stayed at Apple. During his time away, he founded Next and bought Pixar. Those years of struggle taught him valuable lessons about leadership, design, and perseverance. When he returned to Apple in 1997, he was a wiser, more focused, and more determined leader. The company that had once fired him was saved by him and transformed into the most valuable company in the world. Steve Jobs didn't just build products. He built a philosophy. He taught the world the importance of simplicity, passion, and thinking differently. His famous words, "Stay hungry, stay foolish," continue to inspire millions of people to chase their dreams with courage. Even while battling cancer, Steve continued to lead with vision and intensity. He wanted to leave a dent in the universe. And he did. Today, Apple is one of the most admired companies in the world. Pixar continues to create beloved stories. And Steve's influence can be seen in technology, design, and business leadership everywhere. The heartbreaking yet inspiring truth is this: Steve Jobs was fired from his own company, faced public humiliation, and lost everything he had built. But he refused to let that defeat him. He used that pain as fuel to come back stronger and create things that change the world. So the next time life knocks you down, whether you lose a job, face failure, or feel completely lost, remember Steve Jobs. Remember the billionaire who was fired from his own company, and use that moment to build something even greater. That is the power of resilience. That is the power of vision. And that is how you rise from zero. If this story of Steve Jobs inspired you, Watch our other documentary, How Elon Musk Lost Everything in 2008 and Came Back Stronger next. Make sure to subscribe to Rise from Zero and turn on notifications so you never miss powerful true stories. If Steve Jobs' journey moved you, drop a like and comment below. What is the biggest failure you have faced, and what did you learn from it? Thank you for watching. Now go out there and create something meaningful.